Hello, my name is Sarah, and I will be speaking to you today on my character, King Louis XVI, from our French Revolution simulation. Going into this class, I had a little background on Louis, due mostly in part to the fact that my high school world history class was mostly just the English and French revolutions with a tangent on Protestantism and the World Wars. Small world. Shout out to my history teacher for bringing her life-size cardboard cutout of Henry VIII class and explaining his life-size cardboard codpiece to a bunch of horrified teenagers. Lunatic behavior, but I respect the hustle. I'd like to start off by saying that I don't support imperialism. However, I did have a really good time being king. So if anyone is looking to do some recreational usurping and would like to install me as the new monarch, hit me up. Now on to my poor little meow meow, Louis XVI. I was handed an almost impossible role, but I'm stubborn and spiteful and I wanted to win. So I took a good faith interpretation of my character. Louis was described as shy and bookish as a child, and it sounded to me like the kid had anxiety, and I can relate. His outgoing brother was supposed to be on the throne, but he up and died at 9 years old, and that just left Louis. To see it, despite this, he was one of the kindest kings in French history. Louis wasn't supposed to be king, and he probably didn't even want to be king. But he was much less murdery and conquery than his predecessors, but that's kind of a low bar. Maybe if things were different, he could have been a good king, but the real tragedy of King Louis was that if he had been raised in different circumstances, he could have even been a good person. Like us all, Louis is a product of his time. At what point in childhood do nature and nurture phase out and free will and critical thinking come into play? Louis was programmed from birth to believe that he was superior to everyone around him. He was raised to be pretentious and demanding the same way we're raised to say our please and thank yous. It becomes automatic, and yet he was incredibly bright and had access to more information than most people at the continent at the time. At some point, we have to acknowledge that his actions were fueled by willful ignorance. He was also very pious. Louis was taught he was better than everyone save God, and in his last moments, it was his faith in God that allowed him to be both humble and regal. So I thought, okay, the guy isn't evil, he's incompetent. And he isn't stupid. His biggest issue was his anxiety. I had evidence he was smart, so I decided to play him clever. I had evidence he was kind, so I decided to play him compassionate. I had evidence he could be humbled, and so I made a leader out of a king. Who knows, maybe we can claim divine intervention on that one. As the game progressed, I did my best to make choices that were both plausible and productive towards his goals. His goals were simple but difficult. He wanted to stay king, and he wanted to stay alive. And that's hard to argue with. I spent more time than can really be justified on a 100-level class on trying to win. I utilized my assets and my allies to the best of my advantage. My mistake was that I had a 2-day window to get that last letter in, where it would have actually done something, but I got caught up in other classes and I missed it. In the end, it came down to a die roll. And I lost. I was a little peeved at first because I put all that effort into winning. I took some consolation in the fact that pretty much everyone else also lost, get wrecked. Given some time, I decided I liked the outcome, actually. I have a soft spot for tragic, poetic justice, citing several of my now deceased D&D characters as well as a couple of the big bad evil guys from my current campaign. What Louis had was too much power for one person to hold. The historical figure could have made the choices I did, but honestly, I don't think he would have. Between the money and the ideology and the echo chamber at Versailles, he was too far gone. Born into a different family, he could have had a happy life as a watchmaker and equestrian. Unfortunately, the role of king and imperialism as a whole are fundamentally unethical. Even if Louis had been a good king, he never could have been a good person. We've talked a lot about genocide in this class, and I think we can all agree, real bummer. I don't think Louis starved his people on purpose, or because he hated them, but I do think he was responsible for their deaths. But in his same position, any of us could have that kind of bloodshed on our hands. Maybe even worse. At the end of the game, I was quite attached to Louis. Not the king who walked calmly to the guillotine, but the shy, nerdy little kid who liked stars and animals and could never grow up to be anything but a monster. Speech over. I just want to say, I know I'm in my car. It's the only place I could find that was quiet and private, I swear I'm not driving. All right. Thanks for listening.